Hello. Regarding the videos on the Japanese internment camps, I think propaganda is uh, obviously, if it's deliberate and planned, and for the purpose of creating an enemy or dehumanizing, as it were. I think it's quite effective. It can be quite effective toward the end of unifying people around a common enemy. We saw that happen then. I think because of the things that happened in our history around World War II, I think that we might be a little bit more resistant to that propaganda, and I think we see it particularly in the United States on both sides of the political aisle. We are very wary of ideological propaganda in all of its various forms. And so I think maybe we might be able to root it out a little bit easier. Do I see it today? I think depending on your particular perspective or political bent, you could probably make an argument that it exists in certain ways. I think that it exists in media to purport specific viewpoints of our culture, and really it creates enemies and separations within us, between one another. But it's whether it's a portrayal of a particular ethnic group being specifically oppressed, or whether it's a portrayal of a specific ethnic group having a sort of a fatal flaw of behavior, coming at that from two different perspectives. I think that it does create an us and them within ourselves, within our own culture, within our neighbors. Not so much so in the war sense as it seems to be. Of course, there is also the issue of the jihadists, or the radical Muslims, and I think there might be a little bit of consistent skewed ideologies being portrayed as common, that aren't necessarily common. And however, I think it's an entirely different type of climate, culture, media. It's not government produced. It's not specifically. It comes through private media outlets, and yeah, we can go into conspiracies about those being conflated with the government and whatnot. But I think that's counterproductive for this exercise. So I think that we have become astute at navigating through that, and those who are beholden adamantly to those polarizing type of ideas are really the only ones who are consuming that type of propaganda and taking it into themselves as something that's even remotely valid. Not so much on your everyday, Fred and Ethel, or whatever you want to call it, or Ricky and Lucy. The overall message conveyed by the government to actually put the Japanese in the internment camps. I think if we put ourselves into the perspective of wartime and the all the nuances and difficulties that represents, I think you can see the thread of why, and why they would do such a thing. But it is quite interesting that that we would choose only the Japanese and not be rounding up non-native Germans. It's definitely a difficult thing to understand. Of course, there's an entirely missed portion of all of that regarding ethnic participation in those wars, and that's the participation of imams and those who were trying to usher in the caliphate back then, who joined up with the Germans. I wonder if that's something else to explore in this particular type of topic. A lot of information on that we don't have time for in this video. George Takei's account is, in my opinion, not to be callous, but is what is to be expected. You would think that it would be terrifying and unfair and ridiculous, what he went through and what his family went through, and it definitely was. We have the benefit of retrospect to see how awful and ridiculous all of that really, really was, and the manipulated questions and all of those sorts of things are just awful, and it doesn't make me proud of those decisions. This is all stuff that I studied when I was in school. I'm a political science major, with history as a minor, and these things are not proud moments for American policy, but I don't think they're things that we can sit on. I think something that's interesting about the Japanese, at least the few that I know, which I'm not in relationship with many folks who are of Japanese descent, but the few that I know don't seem to even think about that in any regular sense, even though they're not that far removed from the generation that experienced it. It's not something they sort of moved on, and their ability to forgive and to live in an honorable way seems to be an example for these types of things. As far as the hypothetical, I think in short, the hypothetical of what I would do in the situation of being able to enter into ministry at that particular time with that particular group of people, I would hope that I would be part of the reconciliation process to, thinking about it now, if I would apply my current opinions in that particular culture, which is always hard to do, what I would want to do is be part of restoring them back, be an advocate for, summarily restoring what was lost, making sure that their properties are returned to them in any way that's possible, and try to advocate for getting repairs done that might need to be done, and practical things like that, getting them restored and reconciled back to their former life. And I think that's pretty much it. So hope that answers the questions. A little bit longer than 5 minutes. My apologies.